The grand crystal hall of the Arvan Empire was silent. Not a single noble dared to whisper. The walls, made of glowing blue crystal, reflected the tension inside the room. Hundreds of alien nobles had gathered, dressed in their brightest armor and royal robes. They all waited for one moment, the choosing of a suitor for Princess Kyra Valsaran. The hall had seen many ceremonies before, but nothing like this. Because today, everyone knew something important. The princess had rejected every suitor so far. Not just a few. Not 10. Hundreds. And she rejected them all within seconds. Some fainted the moment they stood before her. Some ran out of the hall in pure fear. A few others tried to impress her and ended up embarrassing themselves in front of the entire empire. No one could stand under her gaze. No one could survive her telepathic test. Now, the nobles stood in stiff silence, praying they wouldn't be the next to be humiliated. A whisper moved through the room, soft but sharp. Today will be worse. I can feel it. Another voice answered, the princess is impossible to please. She sees through everyone. But no one dared to speak louder. The emperor sat on his high throne at the end of the hall, watching the ceremony with tired eyes. He was known as a powerful ruler, but even he could not control his daughter's choices. Princess Kyra stood beside him, tall and calm, wearing a silver crown that glowed like starlight. Her blue skin shimmered under the crystal lights. Her eyes, cold, bright, and sharp, moved across the crowd. One glance from her felt like someone was reading your soul. Kyra was no ordinary royal. She was the strongest telepath in the history of her species. She could sense fear, lies, pride, greed, every weakness. And she hated weakness. This was why she rejected every suitor. She didn't want a political match. She wanted someone strong enough to face her without trembling. Bring in the first suitor, the emperor commanded. The crystal doors opened, and a tall alien noble walked in. He looked confident, but his shaking tail gave him away. He bowed deeply before Kyra. My princess, I. Kyra didn't let him finish. Her eyes narrowed. For a moment she scanned his mind. Then she spoke, her voice cold. Arrogance. Empty pride. Leave. The suitor froze, humiliation burning across his face. Guards escorted him out while the hall watched silently. Next, Kyra said. The second suitor entered, carrying boxes filled with rare gems from distant planets. He placed them at Kyra's feet. I bring treasures as a sign of my respect. Kyra didn't even look at the gems. She scanned his mind. Greed, she said simply. No. The suitor's smile broke. He left without looking back. The third suitor was even worse. He bowed so low his forehead hit the floor. His voice trembled as he spoke. Please, princess. I only wish to. Fear, Kyra said instantly. I do not need a coward. He almost cried as he hurried out of the hall. Whispers filled the back of the room again, but everyone kept their voices low. She will reject everyone. The empire will crumble before she chooses anyone. She is too strong, too demanding. But Kyra heard their thoughts anyway. She always heard everything. After the 100th rejection of the day, the emperor finally sighed loudly. Kyra, he said, rubbing his temples, this cannot continue. You must choose someone. The empire needs stability. Kyra's eyes softened for a moment, but her voice remained firm. I will not choose a weak-minded partner. Our future depends on strength. The emperor nodded helplessly. He knew arguing with her would not change anything. A royal announcer stepped forward with the final name on the list. Last suitor of the day, he declared. Daniel, of Earth. The entire hall went still. Silence. Shock. Confusion. Then the whispers burst again, louder this time. A human? What is a human doing here? They are so weak. No human has ever stood in a royal choosing. Even the Emperor looked confused. Why is a human here? But Kyra did not react. She simply waited. Calm. Controlled. Cold. The crystal doors opened again. And a human man walked in. His steps were steady. His face calm. His body average shorter and less muscular than the other alien suitors. He wore simple clothing, not royal armor or expensive fabrics. Compared to the glittering nobles, he looked almost ordinary. Yet, as he walked across the hall, the room felt different. The nobles watched him closely, expecting him to shake in fear or collapse like the others. But he didn't. He kept moving forward with quiet confidence. He stopped a few feet in front of Kyra and bowed slightly, just enough to show respect, not submission. "Princess Kyra," he said softly. His voice didn't tremble. Kyra raised one eyebrow. She opened her mind and tried to read his thoughts. But the moment she reached out with her telepathic ability, something strange happened. There was silence. Not the silence of a weak mind. Not the silence of fear. But a silence like a locked door, solid, calm, and unshaken. Kyra blinked, confused. She tried again. Nothing. She had never failed to read someone's mind before. The hall watched her carefully. No one understood what was happening. Only Kyra knew how impossible this moment was. The human looked at her with clear, steady eyes. And Kyra felt something she had never felt before. Curiosity. Not anger. Not disgust. Not disappointment. Just curiosity. She stepped forward, closer to him than she had stood with any other suitor. "What are you?" she whispered, more to herself than to him. Daniel smiled a little. "Just human." Kyra's heart made a tiny, unfamiliar jump. For the first time in her life, a suitor had surprised her. And she didn't reject him. Not yet. Not at all. The nobles leaned forward, waiting for her next words. The Emperor watched with wide eyes. Then Kyra spoke, her voice steady but softer than before. "Very well, Daniel of Earth. Let us see what strength you hide from my mind." And with that sentence, the entire hall knew. The real test was about to begin. The hall remained silent long after Daniel spoke. No one understood why the princess had paused. No one understood why she had not rejected him instantly, the way she rejected all others. But the truth was simple. Kyra could not read him. And that made Daniel the most dangerous person in the room. The nobles watched with fear and confusion as Kyra stepped down from the throne platform and walked closer to the human. Her silver crown glowed faintly, reacting to her rising curiosity. She circled him slowly, like a scientist examining an unknown creature. Daniel did not move. He did not bow any further. He simply watched her with steady eyes. No arrogance. No fear. Just calm. Kyra finally stopped in front of him. "You are the first mind I cannot enter," she said. Every other suitor had thoughts screaming in their heads. But your mind is silent. Daniel lifted one shoulder slightly. "Maybe I just think quietly." A few nobles gasped at his casual tone. No one ever spoke to Princess Kyra like that. But instead of anger, a small spark lit in Kyra's eyes. "Is that so? Then let us test your strength." She lifted her hand. A pulse of telepathic energy rippled out from her palm. The air around Daniel shimmered, like heat waves bending light. Most beings would fall to their knees under such pressure. Daniel didn't. He only blinked once. Kyra frowned. She increased the pressure. Harder. Sharper. Enough to force any alien warrior to the ground. Daniel stood still. Finally, Kyra lowered her hand, confusion and curiosity twisting together inside her mind. "Interesting," she whispered. "Very interesting." The Emperor leaned forward on his throne. "Perhaps the human has some hidden training?" The nobles murmured in agreement. A mind shield? A secret implant? Maybe humans really are strange. But Kyra wasn't satisfied. She stepped back and gestured to the center of the hall. Daniel of Earth, she said, her voice echoing across the crystal walls, you will face 3 trials. If you fail even one, you leave. Daniel nodded. Fair enough. Kyra's lips twitched, almost forming a smile. Almost. The first trial, strength. The floor panels opened, and from beneath the hall, a massive warrior rose, an armored Arvan soldier, easily 3 times Daniel's size. His fists were like boulders. His glowing armor plates crackled with energy. Kyra announced, Trial 1, prove your strength. The nobles chuckled. They had seen this soldier crush metal pillars with his bare hands. Daniel, however, didn't look scared. He looked around the room instead, at the crystal floor, the pillars, the floating torchlights. He wasn't watching the soldier. He was studying the environment. When the giant warrior charged with a roar, Daniel rolled aside, letting the massive fist slam into the crystal pillar. The shockwave cracked the structure. The warrior turned again. Daniel dodged again. He wasn't stronger. He wasn't faster. He was simply smarter. The crowd watched in disbelief as Daniel guided the warrior into smashing pillar after pillar, weakening the supports around him. Finally, Daniel shouted, Hey! Over here! The warrior charged straight into the last standing pillar. It collapsed, crashing on top of him and pinning him to the ground. The hall erupted in shocked whispers. Kyra blinked, genuinely impressed. You cannot defeat my soldier with strength, she said. Then I won't try, Daniel answered. Kyra's eyes glowed brighter. The second trial, wisdom. Kyra waved her hand, and a floating cube of shifting symbols appeared between them. It rotated, twisting into new patterns every second. This puzzle has defeated even our greatest scholars, Kyra said. Solve it. Daniel stepped closer, watching the symbols change. The nobles whispered again. No human can solve that. He will fail now. But Daniel wasn't touching the puzzle. He was listening to it. Each shift of the cube made a faint sound, high tones for certain patterns, low tones for others. Patterns like a song, repeating again and again. Daniel closed his eyes and mapped the rhythm. Then he tapped a sequence of symbols on the cube. Soft hum. Another tap. Low vibration. Another. The cube froze. Then glowed gold. Solved. Kyra stared at him, stunned. How? Daniel smiled a little. It wasn't complicated. It was just music. For the first time, Kyra truly smiled. A real one. It shocked everyone. The third trial, truth. Kyra stepped closer again, her voice calm but sharper now. Final trial, honesty. Many suitors lied to impress me. Many others lied to hide their fear. Answer me with truth, human. Why are you here? The hall grew still. Daniel did not blink. I was invited. Kyra tilted her head. By whom? Your council, Daniel replied. They wanted a representative from Earth. They just didn't tell me I would be part of a marriage choosing. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Kyra did not laugh. She stepped closer, until she was only a breath away. Then why did you stay? She asked, her voice softer than anyone had ever heard. You could have refused. You could have walked away. Daniel looked into her shining blue eyes. I stayed, he said, because you looked lonely. The entire hall froze. Kyra inhaled sharply, as if the words pierced straight through every shield she had ever built. No one spoke to her like that. No one ever saw her like that. For a moment, she felt something warm inside her chest, something she did not understand, something she had never allowed herself to feel. But before she could speak, the entire hall shuddered violently. The glowing torches flickered. The crystal walls trembled. A sharp alarm screamed through the palace. Intruder alert. Royal security breach. Kyra's eyes flashed. The nobles panicked. Guards ran into defensive formation. Daniel scanned the room quickly. From the smashed pillars in the corner, a tall shadow stepped out. A masked warrior in dark armor. A symbol of a rival faction burned on his chest. He raised a weapon directly at Kyra. The nobles screamed. The guards moved too slow. Kyra had no time to react. Daniel did. He grabbed a fallen guard's round shield from the floor and stepped between Kyra and the attacker. The plasma shot hit the shield and exploded, throwing sparks across the hall. Daniel stood firm. Kyra's breath caught. No one, not a single suitor in her entire life, had ever moved to protect her. Daniel turned his head slightly toward her and said, "Stay behind me." 3 simple words. But they shook the princess more than any trial, any test, any telepathic search she had ever done. For the first time in centuries, someone had chosen to protect her without fear or benefit. The masked warrior charged. Daniel raised the shield. Kyra stepped forward beside him, her eyes burning with power. Together, human and princess, they faced the enemy. And the entire empire realized. This human was something entirely different. The masked warrior charged forward, his dark armor glowing with red lines of energy. The shock of the plasma blast still echoed in the hall, and the nobles scrambled behind pillars, terrified. Guards shouted orders, but they were too far, too slow. Only 2 figures stood between the attacker and the throne. Daniel. Princess Kyra. Daniel tightened his grip on the round shield he had grabbed from the fallen guard. Kyra stepped beside him, her silver crown pulsing with psychic power, her eyes burning a deep blue. The attacker raised his weapon again. Before a second shot could fire, Daniel moved. He shoved Kyra lightly to the side, not out of disrespect, but to protect her flank, then sprinted straight toward the masked warrior. "Wait!" Kyra called, but Daniel didn't stop. The attacker swung his blade, glowing red, but Daniel ducked under it, sliding across the polished crystal floor. He used the shield like a hammer, smashing it into the attacker's knee. The armor cracked with a sharp sound. The warrior stumbled. Daniel stood up quickly, breathing hard but steady. His eyes were sharp, focused. No fear. The nobles watched in shock. A human, small, unarmored, with no psychic power, was fighting a trained alien assassin. Kyra raised her hand, unleashing a wave of psychic force toward the enemy. The masked warrior managed to block part of it, but the impact still slammed him back several steps. The assassin growled beneath his mask. Kyra moved closer to Daniel. "You cannot fight him alone," she said. "He's enhanced." "Then don't let him hit me," Daniel replied quickly. Kyra blinked. She had never fought alongside anyone who talked so casually during a life-or-death battle. But she didn't argue. She stood behind him, focusing her telepathy on tracking the assassin's movements. She whispered directions. "Right side, incoming strike." Daniel lifted the shield just in time, blocking a hard blow that would have crushed his ribs. "Duck!" He dropped low, feeling the heat of a plasma blade pass above his head. "Move left, now." He rolled, avoiding another blast that scorched the floor. The two moved in perfect rhythm. Her mind. His body. Together, they were unstoppable. The assassin became frustrated. He roared and rushed at Kyra directly, hoping to bypass Daniel. But Daniel intercepted him, slamming the shield into the attacker's chest. The impact made the assassin stumble, and Kyra's telekinetic blast lifted him off the ground and threw him across the hall. The masked warrior landed hard, armor sparking. Guards finally arrived, surrounding him, but the assassin hit a button on his chest plate. A dark energy shimmered around him, some kind of emergency teleport. In a flash, he vanished. Silence fell over the hall. Only the heavy breathing of the guards and the crackling of damaged torches filled the air. Then slowly, every noble in the hall turned to look at Daniel. A human. A being they considered weak. A man who just stood against an alien supersoldier and protected their princess without hesitation. The emperor rose from his throne. His booming voice filled the hall. "Daniel of Earth," he said, "you have saved the future heir of our empire." Daniel swallowed, suddenly feeling the weight of 100 alien eyes on him. "I just did what anyone would have done." But the hall reacted with disbelief. No, their faces said. No, their eyes said. No one would have done what he did. Only him. Princess Kyra stepped closer, her expression unreadable. She spoke softly, but in the silent hall, her voice seemed louder than thunder. "You protected me without power. Without fear. Without expecting anything in return." Daniel tried to shrug, but her intense gaze froze him in place. Kyra lifted her chin. "There is one final choice I must make. The most important one." The hall held its breath. She turned to the emperor. "Father, I have made my decision." The emperor nodded slowly, though concern flickered in his eyes. "Say it, Kyra." She turned back to Daniel. The room felt heavier than any battlefield. Kyra took a deep breath. Her voice softened, becoming something no one had ever heard from her. "I choose him," she said. The hall exploded in gasps. Nobles stumbled. Some dropped to their knees in shock. A few even shouted protests, but the emperor silenced them with a single glare. Kyra wasn't finished. She stepped closer to Daniel, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her skin. "You are not the strongest warrior," she said gently. "You are not the richest. You are not the most powerful." Daniel laughed awkwardly. "Wow, thanks." Kyra continued, ignoring his comment. "But you are the bravest. And the only one who stood by me willingly." Her voice lowered, almost fragile. "The only one who saw me as more than a title." Daniel opened his mouth, but she raised a hand gently. "I have never met someone whose mind I could not read," she said. "At first, I feared that. Now, I think I respect it." The emperor finally spoke. "Daniel of Earth, you have passed the trials, saved the princess, and earned her choice. Do you accept her decision?" Daniel looked around, the shocked nobles, the broken pillars, the glowing crystals, and Kyra, standing in front of him with eyes full of rare honesty. He took a soft breath. "Yes," he said. "I accept." Something warm flickered in Kyra's eyes, so quickly that only Daniel noticed. The hall erupted again, guards cheering, nobles whispering, leaders stunned. But Kyra raised her hand for silence. She turned to Daniel. "Then stand with me." He nodded. She stepped forward and took his hand firmly, confidently. The hall gasped again, but neither of them cared. Kyra lifted their joined hands and announced, "This human is my chosen partner. My equal. The one who walked into my hall with no fear. And changed the fate of the empire." Daniel looked at her with a small smile. "And you surprised me too, princess." Kyra's lips curved slightly. "Then perhaps, this is only the beginning." The hall lights brightened, cascading down like stars. And so, on that impossible day, the strongest telepath of the empire chose the only mind she could not read. And the galaxy learned why humans should never be underestimated.